the South Africa Summit 2021. My name is Sarah McKenna and I'm a management consultant with Intellecap. Thanks everyone who is joining around the continent and across the globe at all hours of the day and the night. I'm joining you today from Nairobi, Kenya. Welcome to the Africa Summit 2021. We are incredibly excited to be hosting yet another Virtual Impact Week. After our successful virtual conference in November last year, we are for sure becoming experts at this. We are warming up to the new way of life. This SunCalp really promises to be the best online conference that you've ever experienced to date. You can count on us and you can quote me on this. We did not think in 1,000 years a virtual SunCalp is something we would do. But in November last year, we tested our limits and delivered the most incredible virtual conference covering the global south with no restrictions to borders or visas or travel restrictions. This was our chance to connect the globe, and more effectively so. Our small but mighty team has worked tirelessly the last few months to put together a phenomenal experience for SunCalp for you. We know that networking is one of the utmost importance to everyone who attends SunCalp. And though we do not have the luxury of meeting over coffee or on the hallways, it is our honest hope that our virtual platform will enable us seamlessly connect with one another, like-minded individuals. Personally, I actually think networking and searching capabilities of our platform are actually better than anything that we've experienced in the last 11 years of SunCalp. We have about 1,000 attendees of SunCalp this year to engage with. Fill in your networking profile umbrella, and once you do so, it will automatically give you meaningful recommendations for who you need to meet based on your personal interests. The virtual exhibition booths are also very amazing. Please be sure to check them out. We have about 64 exhibitors in our virtual exhibition space, and over half of these are actually entrepreneurs. So you obviously have a good time networking and engaging with them. Also keep in mind that our content will be available on demand. Sessions will be added into Brella within 2 hours of their completion. So in case you can't decide which session to join, and of course you'll not be able to decide which one you will miss, you can check them up if you miss them on Brella. If you need assistance with your virtual platform, please visit our help desk in the exhibition area. We'll be on standby, ready to help you. I hope you have a great SunCalp ahead and make the most out of this. And at this point, I'll want to welcome an incredible leader, who is our CEO, Mr. Vikas Bali. Welcome, Vikas.
Thank you very much, Sarah. You have made a lot of promises. Hopefully, you will be able to deliver on all of them. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, depending on which time zones you are. On behalf of Intellecap and Avishkar, I welcome all of you to this wonderful summit. SunCalp is your platform to further the movement towards Global Goals 2030. We have built this platform on the back of impact entrepreneurs and enterprises, placing them at the front and center for developing a more inclusive and equitable society. It is this purpose that unites all of us into a community of like-minded individuals who've been coming together year after year over the past 8 years to search, seed, support, and scale up impact enterprises. Our purpose is not finite, not a destination that we will arrive at, rather a journey to imagining and working towards making a much better world. In this journey, we need to inspire many of our generation and those that follow by demonstrating tangible outcomes, such as businesses built on the foundation of sustainable and circularity are good businesses. If we are able to demonstrate a few examples, we will be able to encourage all businesses to adopt circular and sustainable practices. Our measuring systems will need to undergo a change. For instance, the percentage of sustainably sourced materials by all organizations at the micro level. At the macro level too, we'll need to color our GDP and macro numbers with sustainably produced materials. We need to inspire the generations, ours and the following, by demonstrating that inclusive business models, working in agriculture, clean energy, financial inclusion, water sanitation, health, waste management can be scaled up. These are not designed to be remaining at the periphery of economic activity. There are already lessons from the global south where some of these businesses have become extremely large, dare I say, a few $billion impacting millions of lives. We need to learn in the global south from each other and scale up these opportunities. We need to inspire by demonstrating that consumers are willing to embrace environmentally sustainable produce. We have taken a lot of initiatives on the supply side to make enterprises sustainable, to get entrepreneurs to develop solutions, but it's time to get the consumers moving as well, specifically those who have enjoyed the fruits of economic progress. We need to encourage them to be more demanding of the providers of products and services to adopt the ESG practices and also manage their consumptions in a more prudent manner. These are some things that hopefully will inspire all of us. All of us as developmental practitioners, impact entrepreneurs, investors, philanthropic foundations, developmental financial institutions, and large corporates have to come together to build the post-COVID world. I encourage all of us to put our heads together to create a much better impact than we have been able to do so till date. I propose a few ideas amongst many others that there may be in your mind to walk this journey. Number one, we need to combine our resources, our pools of capital, to make sure that we are able to deploy large amounts of capital and resources towards the initiatives. We need to reduce the fragmentation and make sure that the initiatives will be more than the sum of their parts. Point number two, we need to think long term. Thankfully, Wall Street is not chasing all of us with short-term return requirements. Our purpose is to transform the way we live. We take care of nature's assets, land, air, water, and hence we need to have a bare minimum, a decadal mindset, if not more. Our initiatives need to be built for creating enough of a runway for them to become self-sustaining, be it on the investments that we make or be it through the grant capital that we want to deploy to get impact enterprises to scale up. Last but not the least, measuring and valuing impact through a tradable impact currency is something that all of us should think about. Just for instance, the migration of the transportation sector to the renewables will have a significant impact on the climate and the planet. We could accelerate the adoption of EVs significantly by valuing the carbon savings that each individual who buys an electric vehicle will be able to make, and thus contribute in a significant manner. We need to assign a monetary value to this saving. Ladies and gentlemen, I expect these and many more innovative ideas which would be deliberated over the next days. I urge you to connect, chat, and collaborate in this journey towards building a more resilient planet and resilient Africa. I would also like to highlight that no agenda on equitable, inclusive development can be complete without women participation. I'm delighted to note that amongst the entrepreneurs who are present at Sankalp, 40% are women-owned businesses. This is indeed a very, very heartening number. The two key challenges for women participation in economic activity has been time, which they have to take out from all their other responsibilities, and travel. The pandemic has reshaped these two variables. We have realized that we can deliver and can work in remote working environments. I am hopeful that these two variables getting changed will further the participation of women in economic opportunities. The Avishkar Group and Intellicap are very, very intentional about contributing our might to this agenda. Day 2 of the summit is packed with some remarkably inspiring stories of women rising beyond the challenges that the environment places on them. Please do encourage them by participating in numbers through those discussions and hearing those stories. Also, do stay tuned in to the launch of the Avishkar Impact Report, which covers some more of these fascinating stories from across the global south, which will also happen on day 2. On behalf of Intellicap again, I take a very warm welcome to all of you to participate in this journey of building a better tomorrow. Thank you very much. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Vikas. And I'm very sure we now all know why we continue delivering better every year under the leadership of Vikas. It's been very instrumental in guiding us and challenging us every year to deliver better and support, especially to the entrepreneurs. So stay tuned and you will have an amazing time in the next 3 days. So at this point, I'll want to welcome Dorothy Tembo, the Executive Deputy Director, International Trade Center. I have the pleasure of welcoming a woman who has set the bar up for us women in Africa and beyond. She has illustrated the ability to offer executive leadership and be excellent while at it. Dorothy is actually my fellow economist who has a career spanning over 20 years in the corridors of trade. And without further ado, let's welcome Dorothy.
Thank you very much, moderator, and thanking you for your very kind introductory remarks. May I start by recognizing Mr. Vikas Bali. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you all. 2020 will be a year that we will never forget. The economic and health challenges of the pandemic changed the way that goods and services were produced, distributed, and consumed, and many critical economic sectors such as tourism were dramatically affected. Despite the welcome news of the vaccines, it will take some time before we can get to return to a new normal, because certainly we will not be in the place that we were in the years behind us. The picture in Africa has mirrored much of what we have seen around the world, with one notable exception. Unlike many developed economies that were able to draw on social safety nets and direct funds to businesses and industries, the developing countries in Africa, Caribbean, Pacific, and parts of Asia and Latin America were simply not in a position to do this. We have seen a particular devastating effect on micro, small, and medium enterprise, MSMEs as we often refer to them. But we also know that MSMEs are the very backbone of the economic ecosystem in Africa. Building back better will mean placing these MSMEs at the heart of the recovery. You are all aware of the pressures that many African economies are facing on their public finances. Figures show that some 40% of the countries on the continent are in danger of default. The public finances are strained due to reduced tax collections, but also due to public health-related expenditures. This is coupled with the drop in demand for Africa's key exports, an almost complete stall in tourism, and a drastic reduction in domestic demand due to lockdowns and reduced domestic economic activities. And also the simple inability by some to purchase goods due to job losses. Africa's economies and currencies have suffered heavily, resulting in sovereign debt crisis for many African countries that have borrowed heavily in United States dollars. The ability to service and to repay these debts is impaired by slow economic growth. But the picture is not all doom and gloom. We have seen the launch of the African Continental Free Trade Area this January, which shows a commitment to pushing growth through trade, investment, and regional integration. The recovery, therefore, must be positioned and seen through the lens of the African Continental Free Trade Area. Support to MISMI's sector must be seen as support to the operationalization of the Continental Free Trade Area. But to do this effectively, Africa must accelerate the implementation where possible in order to ensure that they do not miss this window of opportunity. We already have a sense of what the demands would be from small businesses across Africa: tax incentives and loan guarantees to keep businesses open, demand for skills building and infrastructure development to facilitate a new way of doing business, such as expanding information communication technology infrastructures and related logistical environments for e-commerce, and a continued investment in the business ecosystem to make it easier to produce and trade. Helping MISMIs to go regional and to go global will be key, as we'll be positioning them to attract regional and international investment to fuel their entry into new markets. A part of the solution will be in creating partnerships, as we heard just a short while ago. One example is with the European Union. The recently launched European External Investment Plan, the EIP, expects to leverage Euro 44 billion from international investors to benefit African economy. The EIP has a strong focus on facilitating good and green investments, while also helping to tackle issues such as irregular migration, poverty, gender equality, and youth employment. In so doing, contributing towards the sustainable development goals. This is an opportunity to position African economies to strengthen its partnership for investment with the European Union. However, it is also about investing in your own African entrepreneur ecosystem. Innovation amongst the youth entrepreneurs on the continent is at an all-time high. They are generating ideas, launching businesses, creating partnerships across sectors, and generating jobs. We need to support them. An illustration of this point is that in 2015, only 55 deals made by venture capitalists were reported in Africa. In 2020, we saw over 359 deals closed for a total of United States dollars 1.43 billion. This is only in the tech sector. So it just goes to show that things are indeed improving. In all this, what is important is that countries that have vibrant entrepreneur ecosystems also have the ability to drive innovative economic development. ITC welcomes the continued collaboration with SunCalp in organizing this event and is proud to be a strategic partner of SunCalp Africa Summit. We look forward to joining forces with all of you and other stakeholders to tackle the challenges that I've just outlined in my statement. We want to also leverage the opportunities for a resilient Africa. I wish all of you a very successful deliberations, and thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Dorothy, for the remarks. And one of the things that I've gotten from her statement is that time for Africa to rise has come. And at SunCalp, one of the things that you'll be seeing is the entrepreneurs that we are going to be showcasing. The innovations are just something that you need to look forward to. Go to our exhibition booths and you'll be able to see what we have lined up for you from across the continent. our moderator for this next session, reminds me of my first very exciting trip out of Kenya as a young woman. I'm talking about South Africa. Sazini Mujapelo is the managing executive responsible for group corporate citizenship and community investments for Africa at ABSA Group. Sazini will be introducing today's panelists, Somachi, Chris of Osoluka, that's from the Tony Elumelu Foundation, Julia Scott from the British High Commission to Kenya, Anne Mutahi, Special Advisor of SMEs to the President of Kenya, Stephen Odua from the Ministry of Industrialization from the Government of Kenya. Welcome, Sazini and our panelists.
Thank you, Sarah. And good morning to the delegates and our esteemed guest. Greetings from South Africa. I'm the moderator for this panel, and as already introduced, I'm from the ABSA Group, which is a bank that works across the continent. I'm looking forward to this discussion with my esteemed panelists around how we can rebuild a resilient Africa post-COVID-19. I think we can all agree that 2020 was an unprecedented year, which saw the COVID-19 pandemic sweep across the world, creating one of the biggest humanitarian health crises known to men, with countries immediately responding with lockdowns that had an adverse impact on the economies, reversing any economic gains that had been realized in the last decade. In Africa, the economic impact is much worse, and most countries are developing economic recovery plans to stimulate growth. The pandemic offers, however, a unique opportunity to rebuild what was lost and to construct better systems that will benefit everyone, regardless of geographic, locale, age, gender, and socio-economic status. We have an opportunity to build back better. I'm sure we've heard Dorothy say the same. How do we build back better? And this morning, we will discuss how, as a continent, we can not only restore, but rebuild resilient, sustainable economies that can hedge future shocks. With these opening remarks, I will now turn to my esteemed panelists and ask each one of them to introduce themselves, briefly stating their views around how we can rebuild a resilient Africa. Thereafter, we'll get into a Q&A, some questions, and I'll open to the delegates if they have any questions. But let's have a conversation. I'll ask you, Julius. I'll start with you. Could you please introduce yourself? And welcome.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you can hear me. My name is Julius Court. I'm the Deputy High Commissioner of the UK here in Kenya and the Development Director. And I've been privileged to work across the continent, Nigeria, South Sudan, Ethiopia, and now here in Kenya. And I just want to salute Intelcap and Sankalp for continuing to have this forum, because it's just a signal that despite all the challenges we faced, and we know that 2020 was an unprecedented year, we're finding ways still to link to each other and to find solutions to problems. And perhaps if there's two themes that I hope come through in my remarks today, the first one is actually the one Vikas mentioned at the start. This is about international working together, collaboration, and that's going to be the key to the solution to this. The second theme that I hope comes through is really about youth. So youth, this is a key to resilience in Africa as everywhere, but also a key to innovation. So let me stop there. I'd like to talk a lot more about education and climate and many other things, but let me stop there, Sazini, and we'll come back later.
No, thank you for that, Julius. Stephen, over to you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies, distinguished panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited to join this year's ScanCalp, going live for the first time on a virtual platform. Indeed, an indication of our new normal. As you may have already heard, my name is, I come from the State Department of Industrialization, where I am a director in charge of business environment and private sector development. As a ministry, key of our responsibilities is to develop industrial policy and planning. We also deal with issues of promoting standardization in industry and quality control, where we have a Kenya Bureau of Standards, which is under our ministry. We also are involved in promotion and development of micro and small enterprises. And here we have the Kenya Industrial Property Institute to help in patenting and protection of IP. We also have development financial institutions to help in support with finance. We also have the Kenya Investment Authority, which provides a one-stop center for both the local and foreign investors to try and basically start and grow their enterprises. So indeed, I'm excited today in this agenda of where we want to see how, for me in particular, we can embrace industrialization with as a rebound for the economies. Many of the economies suffered under COVID. We also want to see how, as a ministry, we can strengthen the innovation and innovation ecosystem, which is, has already been mentioned by Tembo, is growing within Africa, and also to see how we can build private-public partnerships towards growing the African continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Stephen. Over to you, Anne.
Thank you very much, Sanchi. And once again, greetings to all the panelists. I want to just begin by appreciating this invitation. I consider it an honor. I'm the Senior Advisor to the President on SME development. And as I advise him, I work across government, including with the Ministry of Industrialization, to find how we can overcome the challenges that clearly are there and have inhibited the growth of our MSME sector. As has been said, last year was a unique year in many different ways. Apart from even the challenges, I think it also highlighted a lot of the opportunities that are there for the MSME sector. One of the, I think, key learnings was that there was a lot more capability that hadn't been thought of previously. With borders closed, countries had to turn to their inner resources to find out what they could do. And I think what we found is that there's a lot more that we can actually do to develop our MSMEs. So I think we'll talk more about how we can continue to develop them. As has been noted, SMEs constitute a large part of our economy in many different ways. And I'm sure we'll be able to discuss that much later. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Anne. Somachi has not been able to join us as yet, so we will skip that. And when she does, she'll join the conversation.
Hi,
Oh, welcome, Somachi. Please put your camera on.
Yes, I'm putting it on now. Can you see me?
Yes, we can see you. Welcome. You're right on time. We were just doing introductions, so if you could just introduce yourself and tell us briefly some opening remarks around our discussion today.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Somachi Soloka, Director of Partnerships and Communications at the Tony Elumelu Foundation. The Tony Elumelu Foundation is Africa's leading philanthropy, empowering young African entrepreneurs. We believe that in the 21st century, development must be inclusive, sustainable, youth-led, prioritizing the private sector. We think that for too long, we have left development to the hands of governments and public sectors, and it is now time for private sector led by young, enterprising, ambitious, driven entrepreneurs to take the continent to the next level. So we're very excited to be here to join this conversation and share our thoughts around how we're developing the next generation of African entrepreneurs.
Awesome, thank you so much. If you'd keep your camera on, I would appreciate that. Let me start with you, Julius. Let's get into our discussion. And engage you in a topic very pertinent to all countries, the devastating impact of COVID on the education system. With the lockdowns, most children spent a lot of time out of school with no access to online learning, not only widening the inequality gap, but for some, the academic year was a write-off. Quite recently, President Kenyatta announced that Kenya and the UK will co-host a conference on education financing, whose aim is to raise $5 billion for education. In line with this, can you share some of the key drivers we need to change to ensure children have equal opportunities to learn in the future? And in the event of any future disruptions, how can we rebuild a resilient, accessible education system? Your thoughts?
Thank you so much, Sazini. It's a terrific question, and it's such an important issue, because if we're talking about resilience and bouncing back better, children and youth have got to be central to that. And I think it's increasingly clear that as we've gone through this COVID crisis, we're seeing that education is probably the third component of the crisis after health and after all the economic impacts we've heard about. And I think it's really important that we get ahead of this. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to reprioritize education. We're trying to make sure that children have the chance to catch up. And look, there's no easy choices in this. We know from COVID that there's absolutely no easy choices. But what we're encouraging governments to do is to really prioritize education as part of their response, to enable kids to regain some of the learning that they've perhaps lost, to make sure schools stay open or reopen. And I think fundamentally to actually learn. I think, as Anne rightly highlighted, that even within this crisis, we've learned some things, and we've particularly learned about digital ways of online learning. So those are the kinds of things that will be critical as we go forward. I think, as you've rightly highlighted, it's really a date for everybody's diary, the 28th and 29th of July. Our Prime Minister Johnson and His Excellency President Kenyatta, they will be co-chairing the Global Education Summit. And the target is to raise $5 billion for the Global Partnership for Education. And it's so important because even in this time of crisis, we need to protect education systems, protect that funding. We need to increase it where we can. We need to learn all these lessons about how children learn best, what we can learn about digital issues. And as the Global Partnership say, we need to raise our hand for education so that that third leg of the crisis doesn't really have impacts that are much more long lasting over time. So that's what we're trying to do. We're fundamentally trying to improve learning.
Well, thank you for that. Just a lead on question. For most with the education sector, the feeling was the fourth industrial revolution forced itself on us. For the private schools, they continued online, but for the public schools, they actually shut down. Within this fund that you're raising, what innovations are you thinking about, particularly looking at introducing technology into education, blended learning, and in the event that there are such future disruptions, how do we hedge that and make sure children stay learning even online and shift the education system from face-to-face but blended and try and create a different outcome?
So again, it's such an important topic. So some schools across the continent, public and private, have been able to stay open and to do online learning, and that's where you can do that. That's really important. But I think, as many of us have found, in some places there's been that increase in inequality where you've got a digital gap as well as an educational gap. And I think one of the fundamental things that we're looking at in the Education Summit is what can we learn from this crisis? How do you do online learning? Because sometimes it can work very well, but what are those lessons for when it works really well, whether it's purely online, whether it's blended, and to find ways where you can actually provide that access for all. So this is as much about providing digital access for all as it is about providing education for all. But that's exactly the priority that we need to get to as we go into the summit in July.
Awesome, thank you for that. Let me turn to you, Somachi. The Tony Elumelu Foundation are strong advocates for supporting and funding entrepreneurship and young people, with a firm belief that the entrepreneur has the ability and potential to grow local economies. The founder has made a commitment to support 10,000 entrepreneurs over the next 10 years. This program is obviously in high demand given the challenges we face today. Given the much needed recovery and the stimulus plans and the thinking around how we build back better, can you share some of your experiences in this regard of what you have done as the foundation, and what are the opportunities and challenges you face? But quite interestingly, I think as the foundation, you have coined a term, is it Africapitalism? What is that?
Thanks so much, Fezini. Africapitalism really encapsulates our belief that it's time for the private sector to lead development on the continent. And we envision this leadership through investment in catalytic sectors. So it's sectors that not only create profit for the private sector, but create prosperity and social wealth for the communities at large. And I'll give an example. We belong to a group called Heirs Holdings Group, is one of the largest conglomerates on the continent. And Heirs Holdings has investments in these type of key sectors we talk about, including power, healthcare, etc. And what we do in power, we're one of Nigeria's largest power producers, but what we do in power is that in addition to creating, generating power that gives us profit, good profits I must add, we're able to transform communities. So we're able to power schools, power industry, power manufacturing plants, enable more children read at home because they now have access to electricity. We're able to power and revolutionize the economy. And so that's the type of catalytic investments that we speak about when we talk about Africapitalism. Well, Africapitalism is just making sure that the private sector takes that leadership position and invests in a way that has conscience. So you're investing not just for profit, but you're investing for social wealth and social prosperity. Our own experience at the Tony Elumelu Foundation has been phenomenal. We've empowered over 9,000 entrepreneurs so far in under 6 years. And we've been able to do that working with partners, including the European Union, the African Development Bank, the United Nations Development Program, ICRC, that's International Community of the Red Cross, etc. So even though we had a 10,000, empowering 10,000 young entrepreneurs over 10 years, we've been able to come very close to that number because we've worked with partners that have scaled our model of transforming the continent. You asked about opportunities and challenges. I don't think we faced any challenges per se, except that the need on the continent is so great. So in our first year, when we put out our call for applications to select 1,000 of the brightest entrepreneurs on the continent, we received over 20,000 applications. 6 years down the line, we're nearing over 500,000 applications. So that's 500,000 applications with each cycle. Again, we're able to only empower a few thousand. So we do call on like-minded stakeholders in the ecosystem, development agencies, corporates, other philanthropies, etc., to work with us so that we can empower these entrepreneurs who are hungry, who are desperate, and who are in need of support. One opportunity that we do see is working even closer with the public sector. Entrepreneurs don't exist in isolation. They exist in communities and economies and are very heavily affected by the laws, the policies, the taxation policies, ease of doing business, infrastructure level, etc. So while we're able to empower entrepreneurs by funding them, by training them, by mentoring them, by giving them key access to markets and networks, we can't do everything. And so we must work very closely with governments of Africa to put in place the type of policy enabling environment that allows these entrepreneurs to grow and thrive. So that is one area of immense opportunity. We already do a lot of work with some African governments. We want to look deeper into this aspect of the work we do in order to advise, guide, counsel government on how best they can support the young entrepreneurs in their countries. So I don't see that we have challenges as such. I think that we have opportunities like that.
Of the youth of the entrepreneurs you've supported, what percentage are youth, would you know, or women?
Yes. So in our first year, applications from women were only just about 20%. And we realized that there was a great issue there. We're big on prioritizing gender inclusion and gender equity. And we do know that it's not possible to get to the destination we envision for the continent if our women are not equal parts of that participation. So in the years following then, we have increased our female participation to just under 40%. We're still striving for 50-50, but we're very happy to say that compared to where we started from in 2015, we have gone a long way in nearly doubling that participation. We realize that women in Africa face unique cultural barriers to entrepreneurship. Many of them are not allowed to play in the formal sector. And so that's why we're also identifying role models amongst our entrepreneurs who are helping to inspire and motivate and encourage other young women in their communities that if I can do it, then you can too. And I'd like to give this example. At the foundation, our senior executive, we're all women. Our CEO is a woman, I'm a woman, our director of operations is a woman. So we're very gender balanced, we like to say at the foundation. And so that really cuts across everything that we do. If our women are not playing, then we certainly can't win.
Thank you for that, Somachi. And let me invite you to build on this discussion. It is estimated that the SMEs constitute 98% of all businesses in Kenya. And SMEs have historically been marginalized in their access to finance. And the current pandemic has not only made the financial sector more risk averse, but some funds have actually dried up. As advisor to the president around the SME sector, how can financial institutions look at this sector differently and begin innovating on how best to serve it?
Thank you very much, Sazini, for that, I think, very insightful question. It's true that out of the businesses that are there, over 98% are MSMEs. And I think this is a trend that is right across Africa. In fact, if you look at a recent study, 2010, well, not that recent, by the McKinsey, what they estimated is that in Africa alone, there were 34 to 40 million MSMEs. However, out of that, 78% or more are actually informal. Very often when we talk about financing, I also like to put it into context because the solution to the growth of MSMEs is not just financing. And it's important to look at probably 4 key pillars. I like to look at the environment in terms of the legal and the regulatory environment. How does that support MSME growth? There's of course access to finance. And when we talk about access to finance, we're also talking about how easy is it for MSMEs to actually access financing. What you do see in a lot of countries, and even in Kenya, is that there are a lot of funds that are probably launched and proposed. Banks are there, private sector. But then you find that because of the informality that I mentioned, a lot of MSMEs are not able to actually access those fundings. The third one, of course, is market linkages, competitiveness, being able to be more productive in the way you do your business. Again, going back to statistics, you will see that out of the estimates you mentioned, again, a large percentage of them are actually micro. And what that tells you is that what is it that is hampering growth? And so it's very important to try and even address that in context of the finance. The last one, of course, is upskilling. The truth of the matter is when you look across Kenya and indeed the continent, a lot of our population diploma leavers, meaning to say that probably even as they begin the job of enterprise, that probably they don't have the right skills that are required. There's been a lot of work that's been done in terms of ensuring that there's work for technical schools and many other ways of being able to upskill a lot of our entrepreneurs. But what you find is that there's still a gap in terms of finding which is the best way of doing that. As you mentioned with women, most MSMEs are also time poor. So how can we best actually try and make sure that happens? Now, one of the key, I think, should I say, takeaways that we should take away from here is that apart from partnerships, we should also look at innovation and also how can we digitalize a lot of the solutions that we require. Now, back to your very specific question of access to finance through banks, I would say that if we could tackle the issue of informality, we would also have the issue of access to finance through financial institutions. Financial institutions, on one hand, have their own regulations, they have their prudential guidelines, which actually restricts them to working with what we call formal MSMEs. Formal MSMEs right across a continent do not constitute more than 20% of our enterprises. So the question is, how best can we encourage bankers to work with the #1 MSMEs in their informal state. Again, I would like to really point out digitalization. If you look at a lot of our digital lenders, they tend to have a lot of data. They're able to tell you that even if someone is informal, they can see that because of the trend of their transaction, that actually this is a business. How can we leverage on that and be able to use that as a way of mitigating risk, for a lot of our MSMEs? At the same time, we should be working hand in hand in trying to find ways of incentivizing MSMEs to formalize. The sad truth is that our regular environment that is there does not sometimes encourage MSMEs or even enterprises to go ahead and formalize. Very often we hear of challenges of, just as you're trying to register, put in your company, a lot of other, should I say, hindrances come in terms of cost. So I think that there's room for using our environment, our regulatory and legal, to encourage entrepreneurship. And I think that for me has been a key passion. And I believe right across government, and I think my colleague from the Ministry of Industrialization will also bear me out. So I think I'll stop at that and probably comment later.
Thank you for that, Anne.
Yeah.
Sorry, say that?
I was going to say that there was probably just one other thing that I was going to actually also add is that even as we look at how can we access finance, I like to say that even what I've seen now is that you can actually have a lot of little courses on your phone for enterprises. And I think that is something that we also need to encourage in terms of ensuring that you just don't finance without the correct capacity building. I wanted to give an example of a women hub that I recently had the opportunity to observe, and they had a business competition where they were going to access funding for their enterprise through the digital platforms. And what we first did is we made sure that they undertook an intense capacity training, sort of stint. And their comments were that it's changed the way they would have done business. Had they gotten that money without that training, they would have probably gone ahead and spent it on something that would not have helped them in their businesses. So I think it's very, very important that we closely link finance with actually capacity building. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Anne. And I think as you speak to some of the barriers to entry or even to growth for the MSMEs, government plays a pivotal role in that. And as Stephen, you spoke of the importance of private-public partnerships, strengthening the innovation ecosystem. So within the Ministry of Industrialization, I'm sure there's a lot of pressure to rebuild the economy, and especially with the impact of COVID, revealing stark challenges in our global supply chain and the need for countries to relook at manufacturing and industrialization as key sectors that sustain local economic growth. What are some of the initiatives or strategies that you are looking at introducing within your ministry? And most importantly, I think driving equitable growth by including downstream industries which comprise our SME sector. Very often when we look at these large-scale programs or looking at how we drive stimulus, economic stimulus, and how we drive and introduce big manufacturing sector, we tend to overlook the importance of your downstream industries, the SME sector participating within that. What strategies are you introducing? I hear from Somachi, from Anne, the importance of making sure entrepreneurs, youth, women are part of that. Your thoughts around that? What are your strategies in government, and how are you reducing those barriers to entry and growth?
Thank you very much, Sazini, for that very, very important question. Indeed, globally now, most countries are looking at how you can enhance competitiveness, how you can enhance issues of productivity. And as a ministry, we are also seeing, or we are also putting into place strategies, one, to try and see how we can rebound after the COVID, especially in this current situation we are in. And also to build on what we had started, which is the Kenya Industrial Transformation Program. The Kenya Industrial Transformation Program is a program that the government of Kenya is actually driving to see how we could enhance value addition and competitiveness, especially within our economy. As you would know, Africa, for example, 60% of the land is arable, hence a huge potential to address issues of food security. There is numerous natural resources, especially minerals that can be exploited. And I think more importantly now, especially now as we look at climate change issues, the issue of Africa only producing 5% of the carbon emissions provides a huge, huge opportunity for us to venture into green manufacturing and also embrace clean technologies, and now very commonly used to avoid the issue of climate degradation, the issue of the circular economy. So we're also introducing that within our industrialization program with a view of also capturing the economic transformation and urbanization that is actually growing fast within Kenya. The middle class is growing already. We are classified as a low middle income country. But even in Africa, we see that the middle class is growing, thereby providing a huge market for manufactured products. So as a strategy, again, we are trying to see how we can embrace a well-educated and skilled citizenship driven by science, technology, and innovation. Of course, the world is now moving towards a knowledge-based and a digital economy. So we want to see how we can embrace and prepare the manufacturing sector with skills that can enable us compete very competitively in the global arena, and also to see how we can modernize our infrastructure, also transform the jobs that we are creating, especially the SME sector. We want to see how we can embrace them and link them with the traditional industries, so that they can, especially as startups, they can come up with solutions that can help in the modernization of the industrialization sector as we drive towards Industry 4.0. So those are some of the strategies we're actually embracing within the framework of our Big Four agenda, where the manufacturing pillar has been singled out as one of the key pillars of implementation within this particular framework. Thank you very much.
No, thank you for that. You've spoken about some of the important partnerships that we would have in Kenya and across the continent. Julius, if I could ask you, the UK trade with Africa amounts to approximately $48 billion. And as Dorothy mentioned, the new Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement could even introduce more trade onto the continent. What does this mean in practical terms in a post-COVID world for the recovery of the economy and our businesses, particularly looking at our SME sector and our delegates, such as our delegates today, especially those who are here in this conference today? Can you give us some thoughts around that? And I will, just before you answer, if there are any questions with the delegates, please feel free to ask, and we will channel them to our panelists.
Sazini, I'll absolutely get to trade, but I first want to really echo the previous speaker about all the innovative things we can do on the agricultural side, whether it's seeds, new ways of working. We're very excited about issues of insurance, micro insurance for small farmers. There's even camel insurance now that you can do. There's real innovation from the private sector on issues of insurance that help small farmers, small producers, help people in the industrial sector. And I want to make a climate point because the climate is changing. And if you think about Kenya, 2020, there was droughts, floods, the biggest locust swarms in 70 years, and COVID. And the story is not all about disaster, actually. It's about the response and how well they did. So all these innovations, all these responses on both the public and private sector are the real story. And that's why, that's why the Africa, to make the link, that's why the the free trade area is so important, because what you're doing, as I think was highlighted in the intro, is you're building bridges, not dams. And what we know is that's exactly the way to go, particularly on trade. This is an issue of win-win. This is an issue about expanding markets. This is about countries using their comparative advantage, trading with each other. So that's the advantage. And when you look at the numbers, this is worth hundreds of millions to different countries across the continent. And so that's why we need to keep pushing on it. We need to keep supporting it. And it will mean a lot to SMEs, because they then have a much bigger market than they have in their own country. And you can see that within countries, already small producers coming together, it grows. Once you get that export market, that's a much bigger market than within your own area, within your own country. So that's why it's such an exciting opportunity. And the progress has been so fast. It's very, very impressive.
That sounds particularly part of what Afri-capitalism seeks to do, Somachi. So the foundation strongly believes in driving the private sector, and that some of the challenges we face can be unlocked there. With the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, what are your thoughts around that, and how do you participate as such a big foundation that looks at driving growth within the entrepreneurs and the MSME sector?
Thanks so much, Azini. Brilliant question. Certainly, we've been a huge part of the policy development of the AfCFTA. Our founder, Mr. Nunelu, who is a thought leader and such a strong advocate for the African private sector, has shared his thoughts, his counsel, and our input based on our experience empowering young entrepreneurs on some of the policy perspectives that must capture and include smaller SMEs. I just really want to touch very briefly on the issue of informality that Anne spoke about. Yes, that is what we've also discovered on the continent. I'm working at the bottom of the pyramid to support the really tiny micro entrepreneurs. And then what we've tried to do to address that is we accept entrepreneurs in without business registration, without any formal bank accounts, with only ideas. Actually, you can apply for the Tony and Middle Entrepreneurship Program with only an idea. But in the course of the year, as we train you, because we certainly believe that funding and training are two sides of the same coin, you're not going to be able to utilize the financing that you get if you don't have the right training, the right business management skills, the right financial tools, etc. So in the course of the year, when we mentor, we train, we build them, we also help them in the formal registration processes. So we support them in starting bank accounts with the United Bank for Africa. We support them in registering their businesses across all economies they play in. And really, because we believe that in order to formalize them and make them bigger and build them for the future, they can't remain informal. And while there are disincentives to joining the formal economy, we talked about taxation, etc., there are also immense benefits. And as we see globalization become even tighter, as we see investment become more fluid, as we see interest in African SMEs from the African region and abroad, it's the right thing to do. It's a mandatory thing to do that our micro entrepreneurs begin to look at formalizing. And all of us ecosystem stakeholders, all of us ecosystem players must support them, must build them, must give them the resources, the attention, and all of the tools they need to formalize their businesses. So I just really wanted to touch on that because that was such a good point. And I thought it deserved a little more attention. Yeah. The second part was on digitalization. And yes, if COVID has taught us anything, it's that the virtual economy is here to stay, right? So we've been social distancing, we've been isolating, etc. But what has kept bringing us together is technology and digital platforms like this, for example, Zoom. What we've also done is enable all our activities to be digital. So while we train thousands of African entrepreneurs, we don't use a single classroom. While we fund thousands of African entrepreneurs, we don't have any physical branches in each African country, even though we work across all 54 African countries. What we've done is build a digital platform that we call TF Connect. And TF Connect is sort of the virtual home for African entrepreneurs. So this is a digital hub. They get their funding through, they get the training, they get the mentorship. They're able to meet with additional investors outside of the foundation. They're able to partner with each other. They're able to sell their products. They're able to buy different inputs, etc., all on TF Connect. And the beauty around this platform was that even when COVID struck, and a lot of other foundations and other private sector players had to stall their activities or how to change their mode of operation, we kept running as usual because we already had a platform that was digital, that was COVID-free, if I can say COVID resilient, and enabled us to continue to empower these entrepreneurs. So we do agree that digitalization is the way to go. We do believe that investments in digital are necessary in terms of looking at how to support entrepreneurs, because these entrepreneurs are coming online. You know, we have farmers in rural parts of Uganda and Kenya, and they tell us that, look, I have a Facebook account and Facebook is how I get new customers. So our African entrepreneurs are no longer offline or in you know, small clusters that can't access technology. We're seeing a lot of them come online. And as supporters of entrepreneurs and all of us in this area, in the development space, we have to think innovatively and digitally in finding out how to best support them.
Thank you for that. We have a few minutes left, and I've been writing keywords that all of you have said. But I think the one common thread that I would like you to close off with is youth. More than 60 to 65% of this continent are young people. In all the discussions and the conversations we have, I think that is one group of people that we should not only be supporting, but actually looking from across the different sectors and systems, how we uplift, reduce barriers to entry and support them. And they will tell you, you cannot have this conversation without us. So how do we, as leaders in the different spheres that we're speaking from and speaking for, make sure that we mainstream the youth agenda as we have been doing the women's agenda? So I will ask, I know, Julius, your two words were youth and internationalism. So I will start with you. Just in 1 minute, can you give me a view about how, looking at how we rebuild back better with youth in mind? I think that's the question for all of you, if you can think about that. And Julius, starting with you, and then I'll ask Anne, Somachi, and close with you, Stephen.
Sazini, so important. So I would say two things. I think the first point is the point about digital and phones. So in Kenya, roughly, I think 60%, probably more, of youth not only have a phone, but actually have a smartphone. And this is the point about how they can connect to each other, how they can access learning, how they can find opportunities through their phone. And there's some fabulous examples about how this is done. The second point was going back to my point about education. We've got to prioritize education. We've got to raise our hands for education. We've got to protect that funding. And we've got to make sure that this COVID crisis doesn't lead into an education and a skills crisis in a few years' time. Thank you, Sazini. A terrific question.
Thank you. Anne?
There I go. I'm sorry about that. Thank you for focusing on youth. Now, my perspective on youth is that we also need to change the way we look at them. When you look at the data, youth actually comprise 75% of the population. So those are the actual Kenyans that we're talking about. We, anybody who's over the age of 40, we're the minority. You know, so number one, I think that's very important to put that into perspective. Secondly, I think as you look at the youth, particularly in Kenya, one of their key attributes is their immense entrepreneurship spirit. They're very entrepreneurial. However, we will never grow to scale unless we use our digital capabilities to gather the right data. Right now, if you were to ask, how many entrepreneurs do we have that we can scale? We don't actually know because we don't have that particular data. So I think it's a very important point that if indeed we really want to grow our entrepreneurs, if we really want to link them, to bigger companies or, the market linkages and take advantage of the opportunities in Africa, the ones that are in UK and in other places, it's important that we actually work on making sure that we do the work of creating that ecosystem of the right data, we need to know who's in which value chain. We don't know how many are in agriculture. We don't know in what part of culture that they are actually in. So I think it's very, very important that we use the abilities that we have, the great resources we have, to ensure that we get the proper data on our population. And I think from there, it will act as a catalytic action to open new doors and to further change. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Stephen, data, important, youth, over to you.
Thank you very much, Sazini. Indeed, the youth are a critical component in moving towards the digitalization and also the modern economy, the digital economy. And one of the ways we can strengthen this, and I think we're trying to do that as a ministry, is to try and strengthen the innovation ecosystem. In the innovation ecosystems, you'll find that a lot of the innovative startups are actually youth or youth-led. So by being able to strengthen the intermediaries, the accelerators, the incubators, the iHubs that actually support those startups, you're actually growing the youth into entrepreneurial, giving them entrepreneurial skills, and also enabling them to venture into the entrepreneurship space. The other thing is to help them in tech talent, enhancing their tech talent, so that through boot camps training and also within the setup of the intermediaries, they can be able to enhance their tech skills, which then will help them come up with the very innovative solutions that will support various challenges addressing the economy. The other issue I see that, and we are trying to embrace the youth, is how we can create an industry startup linkage program, so that within the startups that are coming up, which are youth-led, you can be able to link them into the traditional industries. They come up with solutions that can enhance the competitiveness of the traditional industries, and also in turn grow their startups in the process. We're also looking at having an industry academia program where the youths in the academia, in the universities, with their innovations, we can link them to the industry, which will enhance commercialization of their findings and also grow the economy, as it were. So those are some of the initiatives we're trying to do to see how we can enhance the youth talent that we have within the economy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Over to you. Let's close with your remarks.
Thank you so much, Sazini. It's been a brilliant conversation. Thank you, everyone. I think everyone has made such brilliant points. The only thing I'll add is that our youth have shown us that they have things to teach us as well. And so at the foundation, even though we do a lot of work to support entrepreneurs, we have also really understood the beauty in learning and listening to entrepreneurs. They know their needs best, even though we're all there to support them. We must listen to them for them to let us know where exactly they need our support, and not assuming or borrowing models that have worked abroad and imposing them on African youth. African youth are unique in their challenges, unique in their expectations, unique in their desires. And in order to, for a more meaningful, a more sustainable and long-lasting collaboration, we must listen even more than we support. And I think that that's one thing we've gotten in this 7 years of working with young entrepreneurs. The other thing that I just wanted to point out very quickly before we wrap up is that African youth are very ambitious. And so they're not just thinking for only their communities or their countries, they're looking regionally. In our entrepreneurship program, in our application form, we did some research to really mine the data that we had. And most entrepreneurs, and this is hundreds of thousands who apply from the continent, when they describe their business idea and their business solution, they're talking Africa. So Africa is one of the most used words in their applications. That shows you that this generation of young Africans aren't thinking national, they're thinking big picture. And so our ideas and ways to support them must be big picture. We can't localize or cage their dreams, but we must think big as to how to support them. Thank you so much, Suzini. Brilliant moderation as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you to my panelists. As Somachi has said, we must listen more than we support. Very great words. Julius and Stephen, Somachi, thank you for an engaging discussion. We have unfortunately come to the end of our panel discussion, and I will hand over to you, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Suzini, and the panelists. Thank you for such a stimulating conversation. And for sure, time has come for us as the youth of Africa to take the spotlight and lead in all aspects, especially in terms of trade and innovations. We have brains that are going to change the way Africa is viewed in the next few years. So at this point, I'll want to welcome my colleague Kanika Yadav for a program launch.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Sarah, and thanks a lot all the panelists for such a valuable discussion. I suppose it will be very helpful that were listening to this particular plenary discussion. So I'm here for a program launch. So let me just give some background for that. So as per the recent estimates, dietary risk factors accounted for up to 11 million deaths and 5 million disability-adjusted life years. This was attributed to high intake of sodium, low intake of whole grains, low intake of fruits, which caused over 25% of these 11 million deaths worldwide. In fact, the intake of healthy foods was lower than the expected optimal level, yet the improvement of the diet could potentially prevent 1 in every 5 deaths globally. The situation is similar in East Africa as well. Factors such as high prices, consumer preferences, and unfavorable policy impede the intake and consumption of nutritious foods. There are many inefficiencies in the nutritious food supply chains, such as high transaction costs, access to land, infrastructure challenges, access to credit, and information inefficiencies and market inefficiencies, which drive up the prices of these nutritious food. Therefore, identifying innovative opportunities that have the potential to mitigate some of these risks while increasing the access and consumption of these nutritious food is very, very necessary. One such way to reduce the inefficiencies along the food value chain, and another way is to mitigate the barriers of unaffordability of these nutritious food products. This can be done through the increase in the supply of these foods, which will ultimately causes the price to go down and increase in the consumption of these such foods. Augmenting the efforts of small and medium enterprises that are enhancing the availability and accessibility of nutritious food can result in demand and consumption of such food. IntelliGap is working on many such initiatives that assist the SMEs that are working towards increasing the food security across the region, and one such initiative is with the Rockefeller Foundation. With this, I would like to invite Mehrdad Ehsani to discuss about the Rockefeller Foundation's current and planned investments to support small and medium-sized enterprises working on nutritious food and renewable energy. Mehrdad joined Rockefeller Foundation in September 2019 as Managing Director for Food Initiative in Africa, which seeks to enhance access to nourishing food for millions of people on the continent through the sustainable food system. He has an interest in ecosystem approaches to transforming markets for greater inclusivity. He has provided technical leadership and oversight to market development programs in Africa in food system. Prior to joining the Rockefeller Foundation, Mehrdad was working with AGRA, one of the organizations working towards the food security across the region, across the continent. So over to you, Mehrdad.
Thanks so much, Kanika. Pleasure to be here. I will, of course, talk about some of the investments that the foundation is putting into SMEs in pursuit of better nutrition, as well as renewable energy as part of a green and equitable recovery. Although I will also talk from an ecosystem perspective, because we do need a food systems perspective to address this. But before I dive into that, I wanted to sort of link our work with the discussion that your panelists were talking about the role of, what are the role of different sectors in the resilience of Africa. And from the foundation's perspective, you know, we clearly see food systems have an important role to play. We know that 60% of the population on the continent get their livelihoods from food systems, that agriculture represents something like 23% of GDP in Africa. So definitely it's going to be a key area of discussion And what's interesting is that the emergence of the pandemic, I think, has brought about unprecedented awareness about the food system. It has moved from a topic of academic interest to something that we have all observed, how the cracks in the food system from the pressures of the pandemic have caused price rises, availability problems, which are all very important. And I think the opportunity that the UN Food System Summit later this year is going to create in setting an agenda for the next 10 years is an important opportunity that we should grab to look to see how we could change our food systems. Just briefly on the current status and worrying trends of our food systems, we have sustainability problems. We know that our food systems are using up something like 70% of the global fresh water. They emit something like a quarter of all greenhouse gases. We know that industrial food systems are depleting our soils, affecting our water quality and the natural habitats across the world. So clearly significant sustainability problems. But then we also have equity problems in our food systems. You know, nearly 10% of the world's population goes to bed hungry every night. It's completely unacceptable. We have something like 3 billion people who represent mostly the smallholder farmers who produce our food. And the low-income residents of urban areas, they're not able to afford a healthy diet. That's the condition that we're at. Beyond sustainability and equity, there are significant health problems also with our food system. As you know, our populations, not just on the continent, but this has been a global trajectory. People with urbanization and moving to the cities, there has been a consumer preference, if you like, towards highly processed, convenient, cheap foods, which don't have the protective nutrients that we need, how we evolved to be healthy. And so we're seeing an explosion of diet-related diseases, not just in other parts of the world, but it's coming to Africa as well as we adopt the same kinds of diets. So this is a clarion call because we're getting another pandemic that's coming our way. Already 1 in 5 deaths globally are due to unhealthy diets. And in East Africa, if the current trends continue, by 2030, the deaths from unhealthy diets will exceed those of infectious diseases. So we do need to look to see how to adjust our food systems to address this health outcome. There's very worrying data coming from countries, say, for example, like the US, where they're ahead of us in this trend of moving towards ultra-processed foods. For example, type 2 diabetes, which emerges from these kinds of diets, the US spends something like $320 billion a year in trying to address that. If we inherit these kinds of diet-related diseases, it will bankrupt our economies. So as the foundation, we do want to shed a light on this problem. And we feel that there is a way that we can address our food systems that leads to an equitable and green recovery and improves the resilience of the continent. Now, some of this may sound utopian. We may feel that to try to build a food system that protects and improves our health, at the same time sustains or regenerates the environment, and even builds an equitable future for our youth is just too high a task to try to achieve. But I think if we look at social commentators, some of the things that they've been observing is that we are at an inflection point in history. For example, IT firms tell us that the use of their technologies has moved forward 10 years during the period of this pandemic. We hear from the International Energy Agency that solar energy is now cheaper than dirty fossil fuels, all creating opportunities. We have seen how populations have been willing to adjust their behaviors when leaders have asked them to do things that would be very difficult to imagine. We stopped shaking hands. We're covering our faces with masks. We're staying at home. We're conversing through a screen like we are today for hours on end. So you could argue that there is an opportunity with the right leadership that we could bring about transformative change. Now, what is the foundation doing about this in food systems? So the foundation, in fact, has borrowed against its endowment to make its largest investment in history, in its 107-year history, to look at how it can decarbonize our food chains, bring in renewable energy, and strengthen these supply chains so that nutritious foods can become more affordable, available, and accessible. We have a number of instruments that are coming online. There's already one, but basically all these instruments will target SMEs because they account for so much of the business on the continent, and they will basically provide technical assistance all the way spectrum to grants, repayable grants, debt and equity solutions. And we're hoping that this can catalyze growth and innovation among SMEs, and at the same time really support renewable energy technologies and the uptake of these supply chains. For example, there's tremendous opportunities in solar pumped irrigation, in agro-processing that uses solar or renewable energy, cold storage solutions and the like. So that's one track that the foundation is pursuing. Another is the opportunity that institutional procurement of food avails to us. Something like 100 million people on the continent benefit from some kind of institutional procurement. And given the context that the economic impact of COVID has basically affected the population's purchasing power, then institutional markets become very important. And at the foundation, we feel that we have found a way that the menus of these institutional procurement channels can be improved for dietary quality while staying budget neutral. I know it sounds too good to be true, but I'll be happy at another occasion to explain that in more detail. We're starting a pilot in Rwanda in June on this. And of course, our hope is that we can replicate this in country after country. And finally, what I would say is that if we are going to take a full systems approach, we cannot ignore the space of policy. And I think the time has come for us to be ambitious enough to look at transformative, integrated food policy, not just incremental changes here and there, but a level of ambition that builds a coalition, generates the right data, engages governments and all the stakeholders in order to do a complete transformation of the food system so that it is contributing to sustainability, health outcomes, and greater equity. Great, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Mehdat. And we look forward to Rockefeller Foundation's more such initiatives. Back to you, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kanika and Mildred, for that. And we look forward to more interactions with you. So as a young person in this country, and in Africa, we've had a number of discussions that have talked about young people. But one of the things that excites me a lot is that in my career, I really have a lot of interactions with innovations and businesses. And in a continent that is defined by really high levels of unemployment, entrepreneurship is one of the valuable responses and opportunities to beat the monster. At SunCalp, the entrepreneur is the core of what we do, and the reason we've been hosting SunCalp for the last 11 years. It is therefore my absolute pleasure to welcome Michael Omega, one of the hosts of the SunCalp Awards 2021, to announce the second runners-up. Welcome, Michael.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Michael Omega. I work with IntelliCap and I am based in Nairobi, Kenya. I will be your host today for the SunCalp Africa Awards 2021. Launched in 2014, the annual SunCalp Africa Summit supports the regional entrepreneurship ecosystem and builds avenues for learning between emerging markets. The SunCalp Africa Summit has grown to be the largest convening of its type, and this week we will convene more than 1,000 people from Americas, Europe, Asia, Australia, and across Africa. The SunCalp Awards is a special feature of the summit that highlights innovative enterprises who are solving some of Africa's biggest challenges. Every year, the SunCalp Africa Awards receives hundreds of applications from across Africa, and we have curated a database of over 1,500 social enterprises from various sectors. For the 2021 summit, we received 329 applications from 29 countries in sub-Saharan Africa. The applicants pool included enterprises from across various sectors. 51% of the applicants were from the agricultural sector, which is not surprising since agriculture is the economic backbone for most of the region. This was followed by 16% from the financial inclusion sector. Clean energy and healthcare both claimed 15 and 14% of the applicants' pool, respectively. To select the winner of the 2021 SANCAP Awards, the application pool was reviewed through a three-pronged process. We internally shortlisted the companies to 20 who were presented to an external screening committee. This committee was made up of 9 investors who supported us to select the most sustainable, scalable, and investment-ready companies. Subsequently, we presented these companies to our esteemed grand jury on the 16th of February, who helped us select the winners of the SANCAP Awards, which we will be presenting to you over the next 3 days. The jury was made up of business leaders in the region, and we thank the ladies and gentlemen who joined us for both the screening committee and the grand jury. They sacrificed their time to provide invaluable feedback to the enterprises. You can visit all the SANCAP finalists in the exhibition area and hear them pitch during the Entrepreneur Slumber Party showcases at the end of each day. We hope to see you invest in some of them. For now, I would like to invite Sam Wanjohi from Popote Payment, who will present the second runners-up of the award. Sam was SANCAP alumni from 2015.
I'm Sam Wanjohi, the founder and CEO of Popote Innovations Limited. We have developed an application called Popote Pay, and what it does is enable businesses to completely go digital on expenditure. So we were participants and winners of a previous SANCAP event. So we're glad to be included in this one. The benefits we really saw were the exposure to the networks. Many investors that we talked to ended up actually coming into the company in due course. And we are continuing to keep these networks open because, some part of these forums, the real benefit is you really never know where the exposure takes you. So without much further ado, it's my pleasure to announce the second runners-up of this year's SANCAP Awards.
For now, I'd like to introduce the enterprises for the day. Kiri EV from Kenya, Aubrey from Tanzania, and Matontine from Senegal.
Kiri EV is looking to lead the electric transportation revolution across Africa, with the assembly of 2- and 3-wheeler electric vehicles designed for the African market. Africa's transportation network is notorious for high costs, poor environmental standards, inefficiencies, and lack of health and safety standards. Kiri EV is offering competitively priced, economical, and sustainable alternative to traditional ICE motorcycles, which are cheaper to run and with no noise or tailpipe emissions. Our motorcycles are designed for African roads, African rider habits, and African lifestyles and financial capabilities taken into consideration. We have developed and piloted our MVP over the last 12 months with various key industry stakeholders and now gearing up for commercial launch. And we welcome you to come and test ride one of our models. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, my name is Bridget Faustin and I am a founder and managing director of Aubrey Tanzania. Tanzania is the second largest producer of sunflower seeds in Africa, yet the country spends more than $120 million each year just to import cooking oil. But the worst part is, even the farmers who worked so hard to produce these seeds still lives on the $1 per day. And all these are contributed by 3 main factors. Sunflower seeds are exported, processed overseas, and then returned as a very expensive cooking oil. Second, most of our farmers are smallholder farmers with no storage facilities, no marketing skills. Hence, they have to depend on the middlemen to sell their produce. And these middlemen earn 10 times more than the farmers. And third, the country lacks modern facility just to transform these seeds into high quality cooking oil. For the past 5 years, Aubrey Tanzania has been working to solve this problem. So this is our business model. We partner with different organizations and institutions here in Tanzania, like the local government here and the NGOs. What we do, we train farmers on how to grow sunflowers sustainably, that they don't have to use artificial fertilizers at all. We provide them with farming inputs as well as harvesters during harvesting. We understand the problem of capacitating the farmers. At the end of the day, they don't know where they're going to sell their produce. So we buy all the sunflower seeds at the fair price that our farmers are producing, and then we process, brand, and supply under the Aubrey brand. And we target low and middle income families in Tanzania, which constitute about 90% of our population today. So through our business, we've been able to raise the income of our farmers from just under $1 per day to $7 per day, and $7 is the middle income families in Tanzania. We're a team of 7, and we believe with the right investment in agriculture, we'll be able to transform agriculture, and we'll be able to empower our smallholder farmers, and Tanzania and the African continent in general will be the food basket of the world. Thank you.
Matont is a digital financial services platform that enables access to small loans and a range of financial services to the financially excluded, mostly women in Africa. The problem we're solving for is the fact that there are 300 million women in Africa who do not have access to basic financial services like small loans, despite demonstrating outstanding financial behavior by lending and saving $3 billion annually in traditional savings groups. The financial services providers, the FSPs like the banks and the MFIs, cannot seem to easily serve these women because they don't know them, and the women cannot easily access products from the FSP. Our solution is financial inclusion as a service. We bring these two parties together on our platform. From the woman's perspective, the beneficiaries, we digitize the savings groups and credit score them so they get access to financial services like loans and insurance. From the FSP's perspective, we enable them to deliver the product directly to the women through our platform using plug and play tools, therefore enabling them reducing the cost to serve and the time to go to market. Our differentiation is a comprehensive digital financial services platform with tools like digital identities, credit scoring, data analytics, and so on. To stakeholders within the financial inclusion space who want to deliver the services to the financially excluded but don't have the competencies to do so. From the beneficiary's perspective, tools on our platform like financial education, access to finance, enables them to access these financial services in a way that is available, accessible, and affordable. We have a fully deployed solution, and we've been able to recruit partners like MFIs and NGOs and banks. And also we have 4 products currently on our platform. And recently we recruited agricultural associations with 30,000 members. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Aubrey, for being second runner-up for the SunCap Awards 2021.
I would like to thank the SunCap team for the honor they gave me and my team today. I am so grateful for winning this year 2021 SunCap Award. Thank you for the mentorship support and exposure that you're giving us young entrepreneurs in Africa that provides us with an opportunity to learn and grow. As a female young entrepreneur in agriculture sector, this award means a lot. Now more than ever, I can confidently say that the future of African continent is for women farmers and young entrepreneurs. Thank you so much. Asante sana.
Thank you so much, Michael. And congratulations again, Aubrey, Tanzania. And for sure, the future of Africa's agriculture belongs to the woman. And this marks the beginning of the exciting Bridge Day journey of the SunCap Africa 2021 Summit. There will be incredible sessions that are lined up for you, networking opportunities, and you will have an opportunity to see a number of entrepreneurs at the exhibition booths and even interact with them. So at this point, we want to encourage you to have a very interactive SunCap. Do not only attend the sessions that we have, also have an opportunity to network. Use Brella to set up your meetings and enjoy the next 3 days of SunCalc. We're going to be taking a short break, and the other sessions will be starting at 11 a.m. East Africa time. Enjoy SunCalc Africa Summit 2021. Thank you.